Already. So before we start doing any measuring, it seems fairly significant to be able to convert units. And this was a huge focus in your 10 class, but we should definitely go over it again. So we kind of have two main systems of measurement, and as we saw in the last time, I put up that it's going to be the 20th of March. I think it will be more like the 17th, but that's an approximation. It's somewhere in March 20th, give or take. You might want to write 17th, and then I'll bump it back if need be. Somewhere in that range. It'll be that week, which is the week before spring break. Your exam will be somewhere in that week before spring break. Also, this is going to be a unit where I'm going to do quite a few little quizzes throughout. So my hope is each week you'll have one little quiz. Next week. Yeah, good question. And if you guys are wondering, I do have approximate dates for the whole course. Now, these are all subject to plus or minus a week, but that's trying to give you more or less an idea, okay? All right. Or you can just go behind my desk too. There's a, if it's a iPhone one, there's a blue charger on that white thing. All right, so conversions. First of all, there's two main systems of measurement we talked about. Now, you guys have probably heard, in Canada, theoretically we use the metric system, right? Theoretically. So let's just test that. Let's test that. How tall are you? Okay, how tall are you, Alistair? Isaac, how tall are you? You're all killing me. You're all killing me. How tall is someone that knows?
Josh is for
Okay, thank you. Awesome. Sierra gave such a great answer in Imperial. But I thought we were in Canada. I thought we answered in metric. Interesting, hey? No, she's totally right. So Sierra answered the way most of us would answer. You ask me how tall I am, I'll say I'm 6'2". And then I'll say, yeah, sorry, I was lying. I'll say I'm 5'9". But it's interesting because my driver's license says I'm 175 centimeters, or 1.75 meters, right? So theoretically, we use metric, but actually in Canada, we sort of do a mix of both. We measure certain things in metric, certain things in imperial, and sort of switch between them. So it's useful to be able to do both. How far do you guys think it is to get to Calgary from here?
about 500.
Guys, okay, so I asked how far, and Josh answered in a unit of time, not in the unit of distance. But that's how we often do it, eh? How far is something? We say, oh, it's 3 hours, which is assuming driving around 100 kilometers an hour on the highway, right? But it's not actually a unit of distance. The distance is something like 300 kilometers. Give or take, right?
500.
No, it's about 300. It's about 300 kilometers, give or take. So that's very interesting. It shows that sometimes the units we use don't make a ton of sense, but knowing what they are is oftentimes useful. Okay, another thing with distance. Anyone know anything about how Alberta was set up initially in terms of like the way our land is broken up? If you were to look at Alberta, here's my very precise drawing of Alberta. Amazing. And if you could really zoom right in, let's zoom in on this corner. So we have, let's say this corner here of the province, I guess it would be this. Everything in our province is broken up into squares. Agricultural land is all broken up into squares. These are all called townships. Any guess of how big these squares are? It makes a ton of sense, by the way, so you'll like this. So we broke it into sections, which are 1 mile by 1 mile. And then each township is 6 miles by 6 miles. Now, initially, of course, when Alberta was surveyed, it wasn't using metric units, it was using imperial units. It was using the units of the time. But when you're driving, let's say you're driving to go see my parents in Red Deer, and as you're driving down Highway 2, you see all these roads you're passing. It says Township Road 20-2, Township Road 20-1, Township Road 20-0, then Township Road 19-5, Township Road 19-4. That's telling you which township you're passing in terms of north-south. So as I'm going this way, it's telling me how many townships I've got. And each of those is 6 miles, so it's like if I'm at Township Road 19-5 or something like that, it's 19 times 6 miles plus 5 extra miles. It's all in imperial miles. And if we're going east to west, it's range roads, the same idea. Range road 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, 1-4, 1-5, 2-1, 2-0, 2-1 going on and on like that. So my parents have a property that's at the intersection of approximately Range Road 21-1 and Township Road 30-2. And you can actually tell where that is in Alberta by saying, okay, it's 21 times 6 plus 1 miles from the border, and it's 30 times 6 plus 2 miles up from the American border, and you'll be able to find about where it is. Now, the weird thing is, for some reason, when you just get past west of Edmonton, it resets in terms of the range roads. So it's like 24 dash something, and then it goes back to 1. I'm not sure why. But so, yes, it uses miles now. Here's the whole blabbering. To point out, sometimes we can convert between miles. Because if I'm miles and kilometers, I'm reading, we're this township road, but I see the sign says 26 kilometers to wherever. Or I was driving our school bus to Lloydminster a few weekends ago for the basketball tournament, and I knew that Lloydminster was on the border. So I knew it was going to be at Range Road 1-1, was going to be where the border was. So it's like, okay, I saw the sign said 42 kilometers or whatever, and I saw this Range Road saying this. So, oh yeah, this should match up. Okay, blah, blah, blah. So what's the math all about, boys? What's the math all about? Well, here's some common conversions. And how do we use these? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Thank you for asking. And by asking, I mean paying attention to me, not randomly talking to your friend about your weekend. I know your weekend was thrilling, I understand. Okay, so how do we convert these? Well, going within metric, usually pretty easy. It's just metric to metric. One of the benefits of the metric system, everything is times 10. Everything is times 10. So you're probably used to, from when you were in Math 10-3, we did a bunch of this. I'm going to set up something initially for you guys. Let's say we're just using distance here, so for meters, it would be, meters are like in the middle, and as we work our way to the right or left, we're getting smaller and bigger. So to the left, decimeters, centimeters, millimeters, or straight to the right. And now to the left, decameters, or you might see DAM, we won't use them, so don't worry. Hectometers and kilometers. The ones that will matter, kilometers, meters, centimeters, and millimeters. Those are the ones we'll use. And the reason I set it up this way is every time we take a step to the right, we're going times 10. Every time we take a step to the right, we go times 10. Or, the reason I've set it up this way is that means we move the decimal 1 point to the right. And every time we go to the left, we're dividing by 10. Dividing by 10. So every time we go to the left, we're moving the decimal 1 step to the left. So if we're thinking about that simply within metric here, going from centimeters to meters, we're moving 2 steps to the left, we're dividing by 10 twice, or dividing by 100, or, wow, that was a little scary, sorry, or that means we're moving the decimal over by 2 places. 1,500 centimeters divided by 100, or moving the decimal over by 2 places, is equal to 15 meters. Right, Allie? You agree? Great, thank you. Why don't you guys separate your desks? I know the temptation to touch each other is really high, so make it easier for yourself. I understand. We all need some positive physical, affirmation. If we can't ask our friend for a hug, we have to instead punch him. There we go. Okay, outbeat. So now we're going meters to centimeters. Now we're going this way instead. So we're going times 10, or we're bumping the decimal over by 2 spots. So let's see. 1, 2. 58.64 meters is 5,864 centimeters. See how I knew I had to move 2 steps over? So then I just bumped the decimal 2 steps over. Okay, and similarly for C. Now I'm going meters to kilometers. So it's going to be divide by 10, divide by 10, divide by 10, divide by 1,000. Or it's going to be bump the decimal 1, 2, 3 spots to the left. So let's see what that means. 1, 2, 3 spots to the left. So I have 0.1. And it says round them to the nearest tenth, which I didn't do last time. So I guess we could say that was 58.4. This is just going to be 0.1 kilometers, or 0.13. And if I think about it, I always find with these, it's helpful to have some reference points. So like, okay, I know that 100 meters is a tenth of a kilometer. Because I know that 1,000 meters is a kilometer. And anyone have a reference point for like what 100 meters is? Give me a hint. You go outside, we have a track and field thing out there. It's 400 meters around the outside, but each of the straightaways is 100 meters. So in my head, it's like, okay, I know a soccer field's about 100 meters. That's about a tenth of a kilometer, give or take, right? So a few of those references are kind of helpful. So this one, it's 134 meters, just bigger than 0.1 kilometers. How about this one? 0.0451 kilometers. Well, now instead of going 3 steps to the left, we're moving the decimal 3 steps to the right. 1, 2, 3. So that leaves me with 45.1 meters. Does that kind of make sense what I'm doing? So instead of doing the fancy multiplying and dividing, I'm just moving the decimal. Right, times 10 is moving the decimal to the right, dividing by 10 is moving the decimal to the left. So when going simply within metric, we just move left or right with the decimal. But now, of course, they're not all that nice. So what about like centimeters to inches or feet to inches or those kinds of things? Well, what we then need to do is start looking for conversion rates. So we're looking for, okay, can I see something with centimeters and inches? Can I see something with what we need? You will have, whenever you need it, a Math 20-3 formula sheet, which has some conversions up here. They're here whenever you need them. I prefer if you don't take them when you don't need them, just because I end up printing so many formula sheets over the course of the term. If you take one, just keep it, that's perfectly fine. But for this unit, you just have some conversions up here that are necessary. In general, when you're working on some of this, I'll try to include the conversions you need in the book. So in general, that'll be what we try to do. So like right here, any conversion you need is up at the top. So centimeters to inches. Okay, so I'm looking for something that has centimeters and inches. Centimeters and inches. And I see 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. Now my general step is just set up then a proportion. So it's like, okay, 2.54 centimeters is equal to 1 inch. And you're about to have a bit of like PTSD from 10-3. So now I'm going to set up a proportion. And we're going to do that old cross multiply divide thing. I want to know how many inches for 27 centimeters. Notice how I've kept it consistent. My centimeters are on the same side as centimeters, inches to inches. Now if I'm looking for x, I take whatever's with it, I go this times this divided by this. Or put a little bit more simply, x equals 27 times 1 divided by 2.54. 27, not 27.1, 27 times 1 is what that is. 27 times 1 divided by 2.54. Or just 27 divided by 2.54. And some of you guys are like, I don't need to set up the proportion. I see I just need to divide by 2.54. Great. If you're already comfortable with conversions, you know how to do this, that's great. I'm setting this up so we have something to fall back on. In lots of cases, you will be able to just do one-step multiplication division. And if that's the case, I'm good at that. For example, in this next one, okay, feet to inches. I'm going to set up a cross multiply divide here. Many of you will not need it. So we have 8 feet is equal to something inches. And when I look up, I see that every 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. Okay, so 8 feet. 8 feet. So let's see. Okay, if 1 foot equals 12 inches, and I'm wondering how many feet, or sorry, how many inches 8 feet is? Right, all we end up doing is 8 times 12. Exactly. It ends up being 8 times 12, or 8 times 12 divided by 1 is 96 inches. Beautiful. And then when you look at that value, you're like, okay, I know it's 8 or 12 divided to multiply by 12. Yep, simple. So that's what I'm saying. If you want to set this up, cross multiply divide, feel free. But many of these conversions, you'll say, oh, I know I just need to multiply divide by this thing. Great, good. I do find, though, often writing out the conversion rate is helpful, just so you have it and you're like, okay, I know I'm using this.
Can I also go?
It's a race. Okay, this next one, yards into feet. Now notice the conversion rate, yards to feet is 3 feet per yard. 3 feet per yard. So 3 feet is 1 yard. And I want to know about 14 yards is how many feet. So yes, this ends up being just 3 and 14. Alright, x is equal to 14 times 3 divided by 1. Next, I've got miles into kilometers. Now, I know miles about 1.6 kilometers, but I've been given a slightly better conversion right up here, so I'll use it. It tells me that 1 mile is equal to 1.609 kilometers. So I'll use that 1.609 kilometers. I see that 1.609 kilometers is 1 mile. And I'm wondering about 5 miles is X. Now, just let's take a look here, because a lot of us get into we need to cross multiply and divide any proportion. That's fine, that's really easy to use. But if we're just looking at these, we're saying this fraction is equivalent to this fraction. And this one, the denominator is 1, and this one, the denominator is 5. Probably the way that I'm finding what X is this was 1 to 5, so I'm probably taking this and multiplying it by 5. Right? That's kind of what these are saying. The proportions are equivalent. So whatever happened to this also happened to that. That's how the conversion was. So this ends up being 1.609. So X equals to 8.045 as near 10. So I would say 8.0. Okay, good. I saw more thumbs up than thumbs down, although I saw more blank expressions than anything. So why don't we say take the next 15? Try this. Try doing a bunch of conversions. The space might be limited. Some of them you probably won't need to write much. Some of them you will. Okay, go on. You can work with water. Go through. We'll pause here for a minute.